I was just a kid when I first read that wonderful novel by Alexander Dumas, The Count of Monte Cristo. There was one episode that I could never forget. It's when Edmond Dante has removed the body of his friend from the burial sack, and he's sewn himself inside of it instead. He believed that when the burial sack is carried to the prison cemetery, he may be able to escape. But something heavy is attached to his legs, a cannonball. Even then, he doesn't realize that the cemetery of his prison is the sea, deep below. Unexpectedly, he feels himself being swung back and forth, and then being carried down into the sea inside the sack, which can become his shroud. But in my wildest nightmares, I never thought a day would come when it would be me inside that burial sack. Claustrophobia is something that you just cannot suffer from if you've worked as I have, beneath the sea. And I've been in some pretty confined places, too, that'd give almost anyone claustrophobia. I've been closed up inside of a two-man sub with hardly room to move, and I've been in a natural tunnel deep in an underwater rock, so narrow in places that I could barely squeeze through. And once I spent a full hour encased in an underwater pipeline. But never have I felt the full terror of claustrophobia myself until that experience inside the burial sack. It all began when I received a phone call from the Atlas movie studios. They wanted me to come to the location where they were making a new version of the Count of Monte Cristo. I walked through the grounds of what seemed like a castle, no doubt the Chateau d'If, the prison from which Dante escapes. Then down below, I spotted the company on the beach, busy photographing a scene. The man that I was looking for would be down there. The producer-director was a man that I respected, Walter Wilcox. He had a reputation for integrity and realism in his pictures.
Mike, I want to try something different with the aid of underwater photography. When that burial sack goes down into the sea, I want the audience to go right down into the sea with it. I want the audience to be able to look at this man underwater, fighting his way out of that sack. I want to shoot this scene in the sea itself, with your help.
Sounds great. Want me to double your star, huh?
Well, maybe he does, but I don't.
Well, this is our star, Bill Hill.
Hill?
Excuse me, this is our leading lady, Laura Pepper.
You're excused. Just leave him here.
You want to watch out for her, Mike. Oh, this is Mr. Hill's secretary and stand-in, Mr. Mercer, Mike Nelson.
Mr. Nelson, Mr. Mercer.
Mr. Hill thinks he's perfectly capable of doing this stunt himself. In that, Bill, we disagree.
Walter, that's part of my box office, remember? I do my own stunts, and I'm going to do this one. What I'd like of you, Mr. Nelson, is to train me and then be my safety man when I try it.
Well, we can argue that point later. Maybe this stunt can't be done safely at all. We'll have to find that out first. And Mike, that'll be up to you. You want to take it on?
Please do it, Mr. Nelson.
Well, if the Count of Monte Cristo could do it, I don't see why I can't. Sounds like a lot of fun. I started by looking over the area in which the scene would have to be filmed. Currents didn't seem to be any problem, and it certainly was deep enough. I took regular readings on a light meter. The water had the clarity needed to permit excellent photography. Sharks. I made a mental note to recommend that the cameraman should work from inside a cage. I was reasonably certain that these sharks wouldn't bother us, but he'd work better behind some protection. Altogether, everything seemed to be satisfactory. But the big question still was unanswered. Whether a man inside that burial sack could cut himself out in time to escape drowning, or sharks, or anything else that might happen. There was one way to find out. Try it myself. That would be next.
Benny.
Yes, sir.
Knife, it's too dull.
But this is supposed to be a crude knife that Monte Cristo makes in jail himself.
I just want to be able to get out of that sack in time, huh?
Yes, sir, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Wilcox says you're the boss. Anything you want.
No!
What's wrong?
Cannonball, it's much too heavy. Take a man down too fast and too far.
But Mr. Wilcox likes authentic props. These are the real McCoy. I went out of my way to
Can't
find
you
them.
make a dummy one that looks like it but weighs a lot less?
Yes, sir. Anything you say.
Okay, and that knife, too, huh?
Yes, sir.
What?
Raise a shot, Mr. Nelson.
Sharper.
All right.
Mr. Nelson. Say, when you make that trial dive this afternoon, I'd like to be your safety man. Well, you see, I've done quite a bit of scuba diving, and, well, if you haven't made any other arrangement, I'd really appreciate the chance.
Well, as a matter of fact, I was just on my way now to see if I could get a safety man. You, mind if I check you out first?
No, not at all. Thanks for the break, Mr. Nelson.
What do you mean, call that a break?
Well, it could get Mr. Wilcox to really notice me. And he's got another picture coming up with a part that's, well, if a director really likes you, it can mean a lot. Besides, Mr. Wilcox has his way. I'm the one who'll do this stunt, not Bill.
Well, how's that going to set with Bill?
Look, I've been worrying about Bill since we were in college. It's time I started worrying about me. He got his break. I'm still waiting for mine. That guy can't wait forever.
I'll see you at 2 o'clock, huh? I checked Ed out a few hours later. He handled himself very well. He knew all the signals, and more important, he understood teamwork. Being underwater for a prolonged period didn't seem to bother him at all, but I wanted to make sure. I tried him out on a sharp turn to see whether his reflexes had become sluggish or had been affected in any way, but he just ate it up. He was a real eager beaver, ready to show me every trick in his book. He wanted to keep right on. I finally had to stop him before we ran out of air, but I was well satisfied. He'd be an excellent safety man.
Hiya, Mike.
Bill, I didn't recognize you.
This is what I wear in the prison scenes.
Okay, head down now. Here we go.
I'll see you all later.
Mike,
Yeah, it's me.
you all right?
Yeah, it's in my nose. It just... You got that stopwatch?
Yes. I'll time it from the moment you hit the surface to the moment you reappear. You sure you've got the knife?
Yeah, got it right here.
Good.
Hey, Benny,
Yeah.
give me a couple of seconds, huh, before you throw me over. Let me hyperventilate.
Okay. Where do we put the counterborn on now, huh?
He acted as my safety man. He took his position at 50 feet.
We can handle it. We got him. Okay. Boy, he's heavy.
Movie director and his crew were counting the seconds anxiously while I made myself the guinea pig in an underwater test. It was to see whether a man sewn into a loose sack with a cannonball tied to his legs could hold his breath, cut himself free, and reach the surface before blacking out.
How long has he been down?
1 minute and 20 seconds.
Ed, the safety man, was standing by with air if I needed it. But before I let anyone else try it, I had to know what the limit would be. It took all my willpower to resist Ed's help. My lungs felt like balloons about to burst. I had made it.
It looks great. You have any trouble?
Oh, a little.
You feel all right?
What was my time?
It was an eternity. I thought you'd never come up.
That's much too long. I lost my knife, for one thing. Gotta tie this down, Benny.
All right, tie the knife down, right?
To the wrist, huh?
Okay.
A couple of other things like that need to be done before I can let your man get out of that sacking, but your stunt can be done. It'll work.
Good. How many more rehearsals do you think you'll need before we can shoot it?
Just one more ought to do it. But I'm going to be the safety man from now on. I figure the man who really does a stunt ought to have at least one rehearsal inside of that sacking before you take it. What do you say?
Well, I think so, too.
Who's that man going to be?
Ed, can you be ready for the dress rehearsal by tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
The assistant will give you both a definite call.
That's gonna be all right.
Uh-huh.
You're right, Benny. There's plenty of room in there for the camera crew.
Oh, yeah.
We shoot through these windows here.
Ed, I've made up my mind about this stunt. I've just got too much at stake to let anybody else do it. I've been telling the press for weeks now that nobody'd be in that sacking but me, and that's who it's got to be.
Thought this was settled.
Look, Mike, I'll level with you. I know I'm not the world's greatest actor, but this physical stuff, well, that's my special angle, my big appeal.
Yeah, I know, Bill, but Mr. Wilcox said that
Ed, you're still working for me, and that's the way I want it. And that's final.
Thanks.
Because Ed told you that this was his big opportunity, And I suppose he told you in the last 2 years I've gotten him no less than 3 screen tests, and he muffed them all. Ask anybody in the crew. Ask Benny.
It's true.
He just hasn't got what it takes.
Now, this stunt is still my responsibility, you know.
Mike, I've got a proposition for you. I want to try it. If I foul up or you say I'm too slow, whatever, I'll accept it. Word of honor.
I don't know, Bill. Mr. Wilcox will never forgive me.
You'd be there as safety man. What could go wrong?
If you don't pass the tests, I tell you to forget all about it. There'll be no arguments with me or with Mr. Wilcox.
Not another word.
But you got to carry a diving lung in that sack with you.
Okay? It's a deal.
I didn't know whether I was making a mistake or not, but I didn't see how I could lose either way. If Bill handled himself badly underwater, he'd be out of our hair. If he handled himself well, it would make my job easier. Bill was a superb natural athlete. He was out of the sacking and had freed himself in amazing time, as though everything had zippers. I couldn't do any better myself, nor did I know anyone else who could. Bill could be sure that I'd give him the highest marks. He was counting on that in his showdown with the director, and it was a showdown.
Walter, you know I'm not trying to be temperamental. I'm just trying to do the same thing you are. Make a better, more exploitable picture.
We can't shoot it today anyway.
So what happens tomorrow? Do I do it then? Walter?
Look, supposing something happens to you down there.
Nothing's going to happen to me. Mike will be there with me. Why don't you leave it up to him? I'll go along with anything he says, but just ask him.
You heard it. Well, I'm asking.
Oh, he can do it.
On your say-so. Okay.
Bill was made up as the Count of Monte Cristo, and the director was giving him his last-minute instructions and telling him that I had arrived at a last-minute decision, too. Just to play it as safe as humanly possible, I had notified the director that I was taking Bill's stand-in down with me as an additional safety man. Bill agreed that this was a good idea. Relying on Ed was to prove a tragic mistake, but none of us knew it then. Ed also was very agreeable to the suggestion. If things went as he had planned them, he'd be my last resort, and he had his own ideas about that. directed Ed toward the position that I wanted him to take as the reserve safety man. The shark cage with the camera crew inside was lowered into the water. The cameraman released a marker, a signal that they were all set. After that, things moved fast. In another second or two, he would have the knife out and cut himself free. Instead, he kept on kicking and twisting. This wasn't what Bill was supposed to do at all. I thought at first that Bill was acting, prolonging it for the sake of the drama. It was logical. More seconds went by. Too many. Precious seconds. I waited until I could wait no longer. In I went. I cut at the sacking, but my knife wouldn't penetrate. I realized that somehow I had the wrong knife. I beckoned for Ed to come, and I tore at the sacking with my hands. I pulled with everything I had, trying to make the stitches give where the prop man had sewn them. I signaled to Ed again. But instead of swimming to me, he swam away from me. Then the sacking parted. I gave Bill air until his strength came back.